Tuesday. And I'll tell you what those are going to be. So breaking prophetic fulfillments, if you'll see here on our screen, these are a few of the world leaders: Pope Francis, of course, President Trump, Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel. There's Bashar al-Assad of Syria, and then Vladimir Putin. These are only some of the world leaders, but they're some of the key world leaders where things are happening right now. So what can you expect? The Bible teaches us that there is a 7-year period coming. It's one of the few prophecies we have in the Bible that has a specific timeline attached to it. A lot of prophecies are just flung out there and you got to figure out how they fit. This particular prophecy says that there's going to be a peace agreement signed between Israel and the Palestinians. And when it is signed, it will mark the beginning of the final 7 years to the battle of Armageddon and the second coming of Jesus Christ. Now, this prophecy's been in the Bible 2,500 years. However, I think there's a strong chance that prophecy could be fulfilled this year. Now, I don't know for sure, but I'll be explaining to you why I would even think that in just a few moments. So we are not in just any old territory. I did not come here from Dallas, Texas to tell you that the end time is coming. I came here to tell you it has arrived and you are in the end time this morning. Period. This peace agreement, President Trump, before he was ever elected, stated that if he became president, that he would like to produce an agreement. Please advance for me the slides. Go one more time, please. And President Trump said that he was going to do his very best to bring peace to the Middle East. You might know he wrote a book called The Art of the Deal, and he prides himself on being one of the best deal makers in the world. He said, I don't know whether I can get this done or not, but that'd be my number one priority. I'm going to try to bring about peace in the Middle East. Well, my ears perked up as a prophecy student because I understand how impacting that would be. What happened was, the week he was inaugurated, he appointed his two most trusted aides, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and his lawyer of the last 20 years, Jason Greenblatt. They immediately swung into motion. They started making trips back and forth to the Middle East. In the first 7 months, they visited Mahmoud Abbas, the head of the Palestinians, 20 times. Now that's an average of about 3 times a month. That's more than your kids visit you. I didn't mean to pull any scabs off there, but anyway. So they were almost living in Abbas's hip pocket, and every time they went to see Abbas, they also went to see Netanyahu. They also visited many other of the surrounding Arab countries, and they had a message they were promoting. The first thing they did for the first 7 months is ask questions. What do you see this problem is? What would you think the answer would be? And I mean, they were relentless and they were exhaustive. Well, as time went along, President Trump made the decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. That threw Mahmoud Abbas, the head of the Palestinians, into a fit of rage. He said, I'm not speaking to President Trump anymore. The United States is partial, therefore they are not qualified to be a fair arbiter. So he quit talking to Trump, wouldn't take his phone calls, wouldn't read his letters. I mean, he boycotted the United States. But President Trump is hard to boycott. He's got this little thing called tweeting that he likes to do. And they tell me he's got about 62 million followers. So if you want to try to ignore him, he'll just go right around you and keep on talking. Well, anyway, Kushner and Greenblatt did the same thing. They went around Mahmoud Abbas and they repeatedly visited Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Egypt, and they were continually talking to them about the wonderful benefits of a peace deal in the Middle East. They caught sympathetic ears. Now, in the meantime, it was in June of 2018 that Jared Kushner decided to have a meeting in Bahrain. It was June the 25th and 26th, called the Peace to Prosperity meeting. And please advance for me again. And in this meeting, most of the Arab countries came together, and he was proposing, if we can get a deal, here's what the international community is prepared to do. Right now, Gaza has over 50% unemployment. We are ready as the international community to invest $50 billion. Now, that's more than I make every month. We're willing to invest $50 billion into the Palestinian economy, and we will get all of your unemployment down below 10%, and we also will bring the standard of living up to equal Israel. Right now, the Palestinians have a standard of living about 1/3 of that enjoyed by the nation of Israel. So they put some really big carrots out there to entice the Arab world to cooperate. And there was a complete plan put together. However, the plan was not put on the table because Israel's government collapsed. And so Prime Minister Netanyahu asked President Trump, please do not make the plan public until we get an election done. The first election was April the 9th. When they had that election, then no outcome happened because nobody could put together a government. Israel has a parliamentary form of government where you don't just vote for a prime minister, you vote for different parties. I think they have 14 parties. They have 42 parties actually, but they have 14 of them that at least captured a few seats in the Israeli Knesset, which is their parliament. And so consequently, when you get elected, you have to put together a coalition of 61 members. There's a total of 120 members in the Knesset. You have to have 61 or you cannot elect a prime minister. So when they had the elections on April the 9th, they negotiated for 2 months, could not get a government together. So they dissolved that government and went on to the next one on September the 17th. Well, same thing happened again because the nation of Israel is so divided right now. So after 2 months of trying, again, they gave up, said we've got to have another election. That election will happen tomorrow, March the 2nd. And you better believe that God is going to be counting votes tomorrow. Because we are so close to the wrapping up of everything, God is going to be very concerned with it. And if you were here last evening, you know God is concerned about what happens in America because we talked last night about America's God-given destiny. So we have Super Tuesday coming up this coming Tuesday. I'm promising you God will be counting votes, and he knows who he wants in to lead Israel. He knows who he wants in to lead the United States of America. And he does put kings up and he does put kings down. So don't look right now, but you're sitting on a powder keg and somebody is playing with matches. And we are getting ready. I am telling you, the next few years will see the greatest rate of prophetic fulfillment of any like period in the history of the entire world. I don't think you heard me. I am telling you, especially if they sign this peace agreement, you're getting ready to enter a 7-year period that will have more prophetic fulfillment than this world has ever seen in any given 7-year period. And if they sign this peace agreement, it will be the greatest prophetic fulfillment since the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Now, I'm telling you that I really am glad to be living right now. I would be so disappointed if I was not living right now. I'm so glad I didn't have to live here 2,000 years ago when Jesus was up on the earth. I got a couple of amens. Why would you not want to live when he was here? Because all he did was leave them. He just said, I'm out of here. See you guys a couple thousand years from now. And I'm called to preach Bible prophecy. So can you imagine a prophecy preacher 2,000 years ago? Folks, somehow, some way, someday, something's going to happen. So that would be about your only sermon and you would be out of business. And all they got to do was stand and tell him goodbye. Well, guess what you're getting ready to do? You are getting ready to say, welcome back. Now, if you think we're a little wild in our worship this morning, you wait till that day. There's going to be singing, there's going to be shouting, there's going to be dancing. It's going to be absolutely incredible. The Bible says every eye. Every eye shall behold him. Well, President Trump, he kept delaying the exposure of his peace plan because Netanyahu kept asking him, you'll throw our elections into chaos. Finally, Trump, the last part of January, said, your elections are already in chaos. I'm going to just light a match and throw it right in the middle. So he did. He released his peace plan. He released that plan on January the 28th. You can read the plan. It's 181 pages. Let me see, where are you all? Please advance for me. Right there is where we need to be. So he released the plan on the 28th of January. It's 181 pages. And the big question is, does Donald Trump's plan match the plan that's described in the Bible that will launch the final 7 years? Now, before I go, I'm going to give you 5 things that the prophecies specifically say will be in the end time peace plan that we will be able to know that the final 7 years has just begun. But before we go there, when Jared Kushner was going from Arab country to Arab country, he made a discovery. The younger generation does not think the same as the older Arab generation does. For example, if I talk about Vietnam this morning, most of the young people here are going to look at me like, do what? What's Vietnam got to do with anything? Now, it captivated America back in the 60s and the 70s, nearly ripped our country apart. But today, it's a non-starter because we have a new generation. Well, Kushner discovered that what the older generation of Arabs were all concerned about, the division of Jerusalem and the peace agreement where Israel would withdraw to the 67 borders, they didn't even care. You know what they're caring about right now? They're worried about Iran that's on its way to getting a nuclear bomb. And Iran is a Shia nation. There are 2 big divisions in the Islamic world, Shias and Sunnis. 85% of Islam is Sunni, but 15% is Shia. You say 15% is not much. When you're taking 15% of 1.8 billion, 15% is still quite a bit. It's 300 and some million people. Well, Iran is Shia, and Iran now is taking control of Iraq. It's now taking control of Syria, and Hezbollah is an arm of Iran, so they're now taking control of Lebanon. Much of the Middle East is falling under the control of Iran. Now, if Iran can get a nuclear weapon, then Iran can dominate the entire Islamic Middle East. But Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Jordan, and Egypt, they don't want to be dominated. Consequently, they're looking for someone to save them from Iran, especially since Russia is an ally of Iran, as is China. And so where are they going to go? How in the world could Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates stand up against Iran with all of its backing? Well, President Trump has convinced them that if they will make an alliance with Israel and with the United States of America, that we will become the counterbalance to Russia and China and Iran. Consequently, they all of a sudden have decided it's time to get really friendly with America, and you can't do that unless you get friendly with Israel. So there is huge movement taking place right now. Now, let me tell you quickly about the relations that have improved over the last 3 years since President Trump came to office. Saudi Arabia now allows flights to Israel over its airspace. Never happened before. Israeli aircraft can now fly over Sudan and Oman. Israel and 7 Arab states met at the White House on March the 13th of 2018. They would never meet together with Israel, but Israeli representatives were there. The Saudi Crown Prince recently said Israel has a right to a homeland in the Middle East. That is heresy up to the last 2 or 3 years. The former Qatari prime minister stated that Israel has a right to live in their own land, as do the Palestinians. So that's what's going on right now. Furthermore, Israel Katz, who is the head of the transportation ministry in Israel, has now made a proposition that Israel would build a railroad from Haifa, which is Israel's main port, through Jordan, through Saudi Arabia, all the way to the Persian Gulf. That way they wouldn't have to worry about Iran cutting off their access to the Mediterranean Sea and to the western part of the world. And the United States of America is willing to help finance this. And the Arab countries are very excited about it. That was published in the Jerusalem Post, October of 2018. Also, in October of 2018, the Israeli athletes are starting to be allowed to compete on Arab soil when they have special athletic contests. And one Israeli judo fighter won gold in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. And they always have a practice of playing the national anthem of the person that wins gold. Culture and Sports Minister Mary Regev fought back tears as the Israeli national anthem played for the first time in the United Arab Emirates, a country that doesn't even recognize Israel after Israeli judoka Sagi Muki won gold in Abu Dhabi on Sunday. That was October 29 of 2018. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that's what's going on right now. There's a huge shift in the Middle East because President Trump says if Mahmoud Abbas doesn't want to talk to me, I'll go talk to all of his buddies that finances him and keeps him in power. And if they start saying, hey, you better get with the program, this is the best chance you'll ever get, then that's going to change everything. Israel and Chad, a majority Muslim country, just renewed diplomatic relations in January of 2019. Now, Trump revealed his deal of the century on January the 28th, and here you can see some conditions of that. Please advance for me. Number one, these are what the prophecies say about this peace agreement, and this is what Donald Trump's deal of the century, which is published on the United States website, says. Number one, the prophecy of the Bible, Matthew 24:15 through 21, says there's going to be a Palestinian state in Judea. It says the Jews living in Judea at the halfway point of this 7 years are going to have to run for their lives. Jesus said, when you see the abomination of desolation, then let those which be in Judea flee for their lives, because then will be great tribulation, such as never been before, nor ever again shall be. That means Judea is going to be under the control of Israel's enemies. The big proposal is, and it's in Donald Trump's peace plan, that Judea, which is also known as the West Bank, is going to become the new home of the Palestinians. So it's a perfect fulfillment. The prophecy says it by Jesus himself and Donald Trump's peace plan that you can read on the website of whitehouse.gov. You can go there. And then the Bible also says that the Jews living out there will be able to stay living as a Jewish minority in the Palestinian state. The logic is there's 1.6 million Arabs living in Israel as an Arab minority in the Israeli state. Why couldn't the Jews who live out there, about 450,000 of them, why could they not stay once the Palestinian state is proposed? Well, that's exactly, matter of fact, let me quote to you, Deal of the Century, page 12. The Israeli population located in enclaves that remain inside contiguous Palestinian territory, but that are part of the state of Israel, shall have the option to remain in place inside the new Palestinian state unless they choose otherwise, and they can maintain their existing Israeli citizenship. The point is, the Palestinian state that's going to be in the West Bank, all of the settlements that are out there, and there's a map showing a white dot everywhere there's a settlement, and all there is a road leading from there back to Israeli territory. Now, Jesus said that's what they're going to do, but halfway through, at the abomination of desolation, the Palestinians are going to start making war against them. They're going to cut off their roads. And Jesus said, in that day, if you live in Judea, hit the ground running. If you're on your housetop, don't even stop by your bedroom to grab your clothes. Just hit the ground running. If you're in the field, return not back again, because then will be great tribulation. This peace plan exactly sets the stage for the fulfillment of the prophecy. Another prophecy, Revelation 11, 1 through 2.